Hi, this is Matt Long from Landlopers, and you're listening to Barefoot Radio.
Fire your boss, sell your car, travel the world. You're listening to Barefoot Radio with your host, Graham Brown.
So hi Matt, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Excellent. Great to have you here. And where are you in the world?
I live in Washington, D.C. in the United States.
And what's interesting about you, Matt, just covering your stories, you've been to quite a few places in your time. Perhaps you can give us a quick rundown of some of the places you've been recently.
Sure, it's a little challenging, but no, I've been to about 70 countries, I suppose, in my lifetime. Recently, I've been to Jordan, Croatia, Alberta, Canada, South Africa. The list goes on and on.
Wow. So is travel your thing? Is it your job? Tell us a bit about how you can get to go to all these different countries.
Sure. Yeah, it is my job now. I left my former permanent job 2.5 years ago now and have made this digital existence my full-time career. And I do that in a number of ways. There's the website itself, but more importantly than the website, I think I started my site 5 years ago. It's the skill sets I developed while creating the site that have allowed me to pursue other opportunities. So, for example, I'm the editor for 2 corporate travel blogs, 2 companies. I also work with a lot of companies in countries and destinations and putting together marketing campaigns for them, digital marketing campaigns. And I teach them how to work with writers and bloggers and influencers and photographers and help them map out what a proper campaign should look like.
Right. So before this, you say in your own words that you were a former cubicle dweller.
Yes.
What was your background that got you to this point?
I worked for 12 years as a lobbyist in Washington. So I worked in politics, influencing politicians. And the career was soul-sucking, as I like to say. And, there just came a point where, there was no creative outlet. And I've always had a fierce love of everything international and foreign. And so I rekindled, I never lost that love, but I figured out a way to make it my career.
So I'm curious to know about that switch. Did that happen in a moment, or was it sort of a gradual change between being the lobbyist and being Matt Long, the landloper traveler?
It was probably gradual. I started the website over a long weekend, and that was basically I just needed a creative outlet. I needed to do something that allowed me to do other things intellectually, and it grew. And for whatever reason, people resonated and connected with my voice. And so over the period of several years, it took to grow it and to gain readership and to acquire those skills I talked about before that I needed to make a transition away from an old job, an old career, into something that I knew I really wanted to do.
So did you go into that, starting that website with the view that this was going to be a future career, or was it just an outlet for you at the time? It
was just an outlet. It was just something to do. But I would say within a year of starting the site, I fell back in love with it. Both in university and grad school, I have degrees in international affairs. I love it. I love seeing the world, learning about the world. And I kind of forgot about it for a long time. And becoming immersed within the online travel world, both bloggers and other folks, really motivated me and made me remember how much I loved it.
Good. I mean, this is an inspiring story for a lot of, dare I say it, cubicle dwellers now. Because I think they often talk to me and say, how do I do it? And they have the security of the 9-to-5 job, the career, and then they want to go out there and do the kind of things you're doing now, traveling the world, but they don't see that transition. They see it sort of as a do-or-die transition sometimes, right?
Well, and it's really hard. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it's a lot of work. When I was working full-time, I also worked full-time on this side of my life. putting in just as many hours, if not more,
Right.
For nothing, for no compensation, no acknowledgement, just because it was my passion. People don't go into this if they want to get rich. It is a great lifestyle and it is a wonderful job. But it's not being a stockbroker, and so it's you have to really have that passion in order to put in just the sheer incredible number of man hours it does take to reach any level of success, I think.
So in this current setup that you have, do you have such a thing as a typical day? And if you do, could you share it with us?
I travel nowadays around 30% of the time. I have a partner, 3 dogs in the house. So, I do like being at home too. So I try to really balance both my personal life with my professional life as best as I can. And I started out my site kind of subconsciously focused on people like me. So people that were professionals, people that had a limited amount of vacation time. And I keep true to that. My trips are never longer than 2 weeks. 2 weeks is a very long trip for me. I much prefer a week to 10 days. And for the most part, with a few notable exceptions, I try to go to places that are accessible and that people would like to go to, because I want to go there. So I know that if I want to go there, then a lot of other folks do too. So that didn't answer your question. So average day when I'm at home, I keep pretty regular hours to a degree. If I'm awake, I'm working on something because there's always something that can be done. So, get up in the morning and do some writing, do some work for other folks, meetings, calls. It kind of depends. When I'm traveling, though, it's all travel. I don't write on the road. I do share socially, but I can't write meaningful content on the road.
When you're out there on the road, are you actually working as well, or you just purely travel?
Both. It's both. It depends. I try to structure it so that I have as little work as possible when I'm traveling, because realistically, I know there's no time. If I'm traveling, I want to travel. I want to go see things and do things. But I do come back to a hotel room, with at least an hour or two of work to do. But I try to structure it and get my stuff done before so that I don't have to do that.
I think what's interesting about your lifestyle, Matt, is you've got a good balance there. I read a lot of literature out there on the web about people who sell up and travel the world, myself being one. Yeah. But I think people look at that sometimes and think, well, that's a big jump, right? It's a black or white proposition. Either you have a cubicle dwelling life or you're out there on the road with your backpack on 24/7. But it seems like you have found a nice balance between the two, right? You've got the best of both worlds. And I think that's an interesting option for people, because when they look out there and say, right, how do I enjoy a life of travel? A lot of the options are simply saying, right, if you want to enjoy a life of travel, you've got to go and, do the live in Southeast Asia on $30 a month type of thing. And
yeah, well, I think there's more of us than you realize. At least in the blogosphere, when you look at true nomads, people who for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years have been traveling, there are very few. A lot of people have kind of a hybrid situation, because going for more than a year or two nonstop travel is difficult. It's difficult not only financially, physically, but also emotionally and personally. And so a lot of people don't maintain it for that long. But for me, I have a partner of 13 years, who I like. So, I was never going to be the guy that, said goodbye to everything, sold everything, and put on a backpack. That's just not who I am. I like coming home. I about 2 or 3 years ago, I wrote an article called Tales of a Traveling Homebody. I love to travel, but I also like to be home. So it's a good mix for me, and it's one that is difficult to maintain at times because, things come up, and the world is a big, beautiful place. I would love to see it all, but I have to be realistic too.
Yeah, that's great, and I think it's a good example of what location independence could be, right? Location independence doesn't mean about floating around the world necessarily. It means having the option to do what you like and where you go.
Yeah, and I am location independent. I can work from anywhere in the world. I can, at any time. And that's what that I think does mean or what it's evolved to mean. And I think that's right. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your passion. Switch gears a little bit here and talk about travel. Yeah. And firstly, I want to know really the transition from being a lobbyist to being a traveler or somebody involved in the travel industry or a travel professional. Firstly, is there any kind of sync there with your former life?
Only in that being a people person helps. Being an extrovert to a degree, I think, does help. I'm always happy to meet new people all the time. And the travel industry may be the largest in the world, but it seems like a very small community at times. And it's important to get out there and meet people and to go to conferences and meetings and put faces with names. We exist in a digital world, yet I've realized within the last year or two how important face-to-face meetings still are. You can only get to know someone's real personality in person. And that helps in a business context tremendously.
For sure. I mean, if you think as a species we've developed for hundreds of thousands of years, but only the last 10 we've had digital, right? So we still need that analog contact. And I think a lot of people forget that when they're building their businesses online, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I get more accomplished in a 10-minute face-to-face meeting than I could days of back and forth emails. It's just how it is, because you can read people. You can read people's body language. That helps a lot.
Okay, let's talk about some of the experiences you've had in your amazing journey. And let's start by asking the question, was there a point where you were out there traveling, or maybe there was more than one point, and you thought, yeah, this is it. This is the lifestyle. If there was, where were you and what were you feeling at that time?
I've always wanted to travel. Even as a young kid, people would have pop stars on their walls. I had like the Scottish flag and a map. It's just, I've always loved it. I've always wanted it. When I was 16, I went for the first time to Europe, and that was a transformative trip, and that was an important one. And since that time, I had worked hard to make travel a part of my life as much as I could, whether it be saving up to do backpacking after graduation from college, or, when my partner and I were both working, doing 3 or 4 trips a year. I've always tried to make it a part of my life because it is important to me and it's something I really enjoy.
Why is it important? For somebody who doesn't travel as much as they should, what would you say in terms of what the real benefit of traveling is beyond seeing the Eiffel Tower or the Colosseum in Rome? What's it about for you?
I think travel is inherently selfish, and that's a good thing. I think that it helps us grow personally in ways that almost can't be explained unless you've done it. Silly things. You mentioned the Eiffel Tower. Fine, go to France, and talk with people, learn from them. I mean, that's a cultural interaction you can only get by being there. And in the process, it helps you grow. It helps you grow to understand how other people perceive you and your country. It's an education that is unlike any other, I think.
That last point, Matt, I think is an interesting one. It helps you understand how people see you and perceive you in your country. I'm assuming you're American, right?
I am.
What sort of experiences have you had of that?
America gets picked on a lot. Some deservedly so, some not. But all of my interactions have always been positive. I was in Germany on the night before the first Iraq invasion in 2003, and I remember there were peace rallies everywhere, massive vigils, and people were really unhappy about it. But I had some fantastic conversations with people in cafes and bars, and there was no personal anger towards me, but they were interested. They were interested to know what I thought and why I thought whether or not it was a good decision. And that was a really interesting place and time to be, I think. Because on the news you'll see these same vigils and you'll see protests and think, oh, they must hate us. But they don't. 99% of the world is made up of wonderful people. Every country is mostly wonderful, awesome people. And getting out there and meeting with them is a joy and a privilege.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. If you get beyond the Fox News version of the world events, right? You sit and share a beer or a coffee with somebody, all that melts away.
It does. I mean, I've had great conversations everywhere from Palestine to you name it, and it's just been really engaging, thoughtful moments.
Wow, that's great, and everybody should have it. I mean, I've been in the Middle East, like you say, and I've been in Asia, and people you thought would hate you, but usually they say, no, we love you, we're really interested, we want to talk about these things. And even if there's some fraction between, the foreign policies of two countries, they see beyond that on an individual level, right? And I think that's why we need to travel, isn't it? That's what we see. We see that we're more connected than the news would have us believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Let's talk about bucket lists, because you made a really interesting post which sort of alerted my attention. And I know you've got some evolving opinions on this about why you hate bucket lists, and I know you sort of will correct us on that title as well with your sort of more updated opinion. What's the latest?
It's partially true, and I've defended it many times. I don't see the point in having a bucket list because I think everyone should want to go everywhere. There isn't a place I haven't been that I don't want to go. That being said, I understand the inclination or desire to want to prioritize those things. So, there's 190 countries? Yes, I would like to see all of them, but I would like to see some more than others. I don't need to go to South Sudan anytime soon. If I were given the opportunity, would I go? Maybe, but I'm not planning that for next month. So I understand the need to prioritize. What I think may be more interesting, a concept for a bucket list, is to do the experiences that you want more than anything else, rather than just places to tick off a list. So whether or not that's blackwater tubing in New Zealand, or going a camel ride in Jordan, or eating a Danish in Denmark, whatever it is, whatever you think is cool or interesting, I think that's a better way of tackling it.
And a diplomatic answer as well. I see you've moved in political circles long enough.
6 for 12 years.
Well done for that. Well, let's talk about some of your experiences. Will there be any particular experiences that are going to stay with you when you talked, when you're old and grey and you're recalling your travel tales? Which will be the ones that you will fondly remember? Which may at the time be the ones that made you cry?
No, they usually are, and I'm already gray, so I can tell you what I talk about now. I had the privilege a year and a half ago of going down to Antarctica, which was a wonderful experience, and also one of those experiences I alluded to earlier that, the average person probably won't do. But it was a wonderful opportunity, and I'm very glad to have gone. I mean, there's just nothing like standing up on an ice cliff over a small sea and being the only person for thousands of miles. It's a beautiful place, and I would love to go back given the opportunity. Australia has turned into one of my favorite countries, and we talk about every week here at home, just things that we've done there that really enjoyed. And it's a place I don't think I would ever get tired of going back to. And I don't think it's not as exotic as, China or other places. They speak English moderately well, and, but there's just something about it. I don't know what it is. It clicks very well with me.
Don't you ever feel at some point that you just want to jack this all in? Because it's hard work travel, right? Do you ever get that feeling? Does it ever creep into your head when you're flying back home thinking, why the hell am I doing this?
Well, there's two things. One, I mean, my career now is travel related, and I love that. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. I get into a lot of trouble here at home. Went through a lot to make this happen. Now, whether or not I travel as much is another question. I've started looking towards next year, and intellectually I want to maybe reduce my travel just a little bit. Whether or not that actually happens, I don't know. But travel is hard, and it is exhausting. And I go on a lot of press trips, and those are not your standard vacations by any stretch of the imagination. So my job is to make things look completely relaxed, but going through it, it's usually not. So. Right. But that being said, we still take a couple of vacations a year, going on one in a month. So those are good and much needed. But no, I mean, I always work and travel in some way.